On January 19, 2001, firefighters in Athens, Georgia, responded to a blaze at 160 Fawn Drive. Inside the apartment, they discovered the lifeless body of 23-year-old Tara Louise Baker, a first-year law student at the University of Georgia. Investigators quickly determined that the fire had been intentionally set to conceal her brutal slaying. Tara had been subject to an indecent assault, strangled, and stabbed. Tara Baker was born on January 20th, 1977, in East Point, Georgia. She graduated from Lovejoy High School in 1995 and went on to attend Georgia College in Milledgeville, where she earned 2 bachelor's degrees, graduating cum laude in 1998. On the evening of January 18, 2001, Tara was last seen by a friend around 7:30 p.m. at the University of Georgia Law School library. Later that night, around 9:45 p.m., she called the same friend to confirm they had arrived home safely and mentioned she planned to leave the library around 10 p.m. This was the last known contact anyone had with her. The following morning, firefighters discovered her body while responding to the fire at her apartment. The Georgia Bureau of Investigation and Athens-Clarke County Police Department launched an investigation, but despite extensive efforts, the case went cold. Over the years, Tara's family and the community sought justice, but no significant leads emerged. In September 2023, the GBI's Cold Case Unit partnered with the Athens-Clarke County Police Department to conduct a comprehensive review of the case. This collaboration led to the arrest of 48-year-old Edric Lamont Faust in May 2024. Faust was charged with multiple offenses, including malice slaying, felony slaying, aggravated assault, arson, and other heinous crimes. Faust's arrest was, of course, a significant development, and it was also revealed that he had an extremely lengthy criminal history. In 1996, he was sentenced for criminal trespassing and simple battery, and in 1993, he received a 2-year sentence for attempted robbery. Records from the Georgia Department of Corrections indicate that he was incarcerated between August 1997 and July 1999. He was again incarcerated between May 2001 and May 2003. Notably, less than a month after Tara's slaying, Faust was arrested for aggravated assault after attacking another man with a knife. The breakthrough in Tara's case was attributed to advancements in DNA technology and a meticulous re-examination of the evidence. While specific details about the evidence leading to Faust's arrest have not been publicly disclosed, the GBI emphasized that a thorough review of interviews and forensic evidence played a crucial role. In August 2024, a judge denied bond for Faust, citing his criminal history and the severity of the charges. The court emphasized that Faust posed a significant risk of committing a felony pending trial. As of November 2024, Faust remains in custody, awaiting trial. In the early hours of November 26, 1972, 21-year-old Army veteran Gregory Dahl Nickell and his 18-year-old date were parked at a scenic overlook west of Vernal, Utah. Their evening took a tragic turn when a man approached their vehicle, claiming he'd been in an accident and needed assistance. Nickell agreed to help, but as he turned away, the man shot him multiple times, instantly slaying him. The assailant then pushed Nickell's lifeless body onto his date, took control of the car, and drove away. As they traveled along U.S. Highway 40, a second vehicle appeared, flashing its headlights. The gunman followed this car, indicating he had an accomplice. They drove to a remote location near an area known as Brow Reservoir, where they set Nickell's car ablaze with his body still inside. The two men then transferred the woman to the second vehicle, covered her head, and drove around for several hours. During this time, both men essayed her before releasing her near Duchesne, Utah. She managed to find help at a nearby farmhouse, and law enforcement was notified. Despite extensive investigations, the case went cold for decades. In 1992, a man was arrested and charged in connection with Nickell's death, but the charges were dropped due to insufficient evidence. A significant breakthrough came in January 2020 when the Uinta County Sheriff's Office resubmitted evidence from 1972 to the Utah State Crime Lab. Advancements in forensic technology allowed analysts to extract 2 male DNA profiles from the evidence collected at the time. One of these profiles matched Daniel Arthur Bell, a man who had lived in the Uinta Basin during the early 1970s and worked on a ranch in the Book Cliffs area. Bell had an extensive criminal history, including a 1988 SA conviction in Oregon. However, he had died in 2019 at the age of 88, preventing any legal action against him. The identification of Bell reignited the investigation, leading detectives to search for the second suspect. Investigators then identified Darrell Eugene Choate, a man with a criminal record that included SA-related offenses in Price, Utah. Law enforcement obtained a surreptitious DNA sample from Choate during an unrelated call to his residence. This sample matched the second DNA profile from the 1972 evidence, leading to Choate being charged in November 2024. I hope to have an update on the final resolution of this case as it works its way through the court system. In April 1993, the quiet community of Bothell, Washington, was shaken by the tragic loss of 15-year-old Melissa Lee. On the evening of April 13th, Melissa was home alone while her mother, Sharon Lee, and her mother's boyfriend were out. Melissa had planned to have a friend over, but those plans fell through, leaving her by herself. When Sharon returned home around 2 a.m., she found the front door open and signs of a struggle inside. Melissa was nowhere to be found, and the family immediately notified the police. The following day, April 14th, 1993, Melissa's lifeless body was discovered in a ravine beneath the Edgewater Creek Bridge in Everett, approximately 20 miles from her home. An autopsy revealed that she had been strangled. The investigation into her untimely passing began immediately, but despite extensive efforts, leads were scarce, and the case eventually went cold. In the years that followed, the Snohomish County Sheriff's Office continued to seek justice for Melissa. In 2008, they released a deck of cold case playing cards featuring unsolved cases, distributing them to inmates in the hope of generating new leads. Melissa's case was highlighted as the King of Diamonds. Despite this and other efforts, the case remained unsolved for over 2 decades. A significant breakthrough came in 2020, thanks to advancements in DNA technology and the emerging field of genetic forensics. Investigators partnered with Parabon Nanolabs, a DNA technology company specializing in genetic forensics. They uploaded DNA evidence from the 1993 crime scene to a public genetic genealogy website, which led to promising matches with multiple relatives of a potential suspect. Through meticulous research, investigators identified Alan Edward Dean as a person of interest. Dean, who was 35 years old at the time of Melissa's passing, had lived in the Everett area and worked at Boeing. To confirm their suspicions, detectives conducted surveillance and collected a discarded cigarette butt used by Dean. The Washington State Patrol's crime lab analyzed the DNA from the cigarette and found it matched the DNA profile from the crime scene. On July 28, 2020, authorities arrested Alan Edward Dean near his Bothell home. He was charged in connection with Melissa Lee's death. The arrest brought a sense of relief to Melissa's family, who had waited 27 years for answers. Sharon Lee, Melissa's mother, expressed her gratitude, stating, quote, "I'm just happy to have lived long enough to see this happen." The trial began in March 2024, with prosecutors presenting the DNA evidence linking Dean to the crime scene. And you might be questioning why this case took so long to move to trial. Dean had ended up in a psychiatric hospital after being charged, and it took some time for a judge to find him fit to stand trial. The proceedings were held at the Snohomish County Superior Court in Everett, Washington, and garnered significant public and media attention. The prosecution's strategy largely centered on the DNA evidence that linked Dean to the crime scene. Deputy Prosecutor Craig Matheson presented this evidence to the jury, emphasizing the scientific methods that connected Dean to the crime, in particular the use of genetic genealogy. In addition to the DNA evidence, the prosecution highlighted inconsistencies in Dean's statements over the years. They pointed out that Dean had been interviewed multiple times during the initial investigation and had provided conflicting accounts regarding his whereabouts at the time of Melissa's disappearance. These discrepancies were used to challenge Dean's credibility and prove his involvement in the crime, in combination with the DNA evidence. The defense, led by public defender Heather Wolfenbarger, contested the reliability of the DNA evidence, describing it as, quote, evolving science, and, quote, not perfect. Also, to quickly interject with my own commentary, you have to know your defense doesn't have a hope in hell when you're arguing against DNA evidence in 2024. But I digress. The defense argued that the DNA linking Dean to the crime scene could have been contaminated or misinterpreted, though provided no indication as to why this may be the case. Furthermore, the defense proposed an alternative theory, suggesting that Melissa's ex-boyfriend was the actual perpetrator. They claimed that the ex-boyfriend had a motive, citing a recent breakup and alleged threats he had made against Melissa. The defense also questioned the ex-boyfriend's alibi, noting inconsistencies in his statements and the accounts provided by his parents and new girlfriend. After deliberating on the evidence presented, the jury found Alan Dean guilty of first-degree slaying on March 28, 2024. On April 24, 2024, Dean was sentenced to nearly 27 years in prison. During the sentencing, Melissa's family members provided victim impact statements, expressing their grief and the prolonged pain they had endured over the years. Her mom remarked, quote, "The best moment of my life that I could ever hear was guilty. It was the greatest thing I could ever hear in my life." On January 8, 1985, Kinston, North Carolina, was shaken by the tragic loss of 62-year-old Hokie Shepherd, a beloved retired schoolteacher who lived alone. She was discovered lifeless in her home, having suffered a fatal gunshot wound and physical assault. Her 1983 Burgundy Cadillac had also been stolen and was later found abandoned at a local elementary school parking lot. Despite exhaustive investigative efforts, the case grew cold, leaving the community without answers for nearly 4 decades. Advancements in forensic science eventually allowed investigators to develop a DNA profile from evidence collected at the crime scene, which was entered into the combined DNA index system. CODIS is a national database developed and maintained by the FBI to store and compare DNA profiles from criminal investigations. It enables law enforcement agencies to link crimes to offenders by matching DNA evidence found at crime scenes with profiles in the database. Profiles include convicted offenders, arrestees, and unidentified forensic evidence. In 2023, the Kinston Police Department, in collaboration with the FBI and the North Carolina State Bureau of Investigation, submitted forensic evidence to Othram. Othram is a private laboratory specializing in advanced DNA testing. Othram scientists used a process they call forensic-grade genome sequencing to build a comprehensive DNA profile for the unknown suspect. This profile was delivered to the FBI's Forensic Genetic Genealogy team, who performed the necessary work to generate new investigative leads. The investigation led to the identification of Thomas Williams Wade Jr. as the suspect. At the time of the offense, Wade was 28 years old and had been initially interviewed as a potential person of interest. Shortly after the crime, he relocated from the Kinston area and lived the rest of his life in Granville County, where he died in 2007. In June 2000, Ann McDonald, a 42-year-old pharmacist, was slain in Lafayette, Georgia. Her lifeless body was discovered in her home on Arnold Lane, having suffered multiple stab wounds. Evidence suggested she'd been deceased for 3 to 4 days before being found. Initial investigations by the Walker County Sheriff's Office and the Georgia Bureau of Investigation identified several persons of interest, including Clarence D. George. George, then 39, was found in possession of McDonald's checkbook in neighboring Catoosa County, raising suspicions about his involvement. Despite this, authorities lacked sufficient evidence to press charges, and the case went cold. In 2015 and 2016, the case was revisited. Detectives resubmitted evidence for testing, but the available technology couldn't provide the necessary breakthroughs. Undeterred, investigators continued their pursuit of justice. Between 2023 and 2024, advancements in forensic technology offered new hope. The GBI and Walker County Sheriff's Office re-examined the evidence, leading to a significant development. On August 22, 2024, U.S. Marshals arrested Clarence George, now 63, in Birmingham, Alabama. He was charged with slaying and aggravated assault in connection with McDonald's death. Authorities revealed that McDonald and George were acquainted, indicating the crime wasn't random. Sheriff Steve Wilson stated, "It was not a stranger crime. They knew each other." The exact nature of their relationship and the motive behind the crime remain undisclosed at present. As of now, George remains in custody in Alabama, awaiting extradition to Georgia to face the charges. If you made it this far, remember to hit the like button and share it with your friends and family. If you want to support my work further, please consider checking out the YouTube membership or Patreon. You can support for as little as $1 a month, and there's some cool little perks.